Siri, this is so sad.
I'm sorry.
She doesn't seem to care.
Breathe, but that's alright. Hush.
Okay, so as you have probably guessed, you know that our Drosera regia, the King Sanju, the biggest Sanju out of them all, is dead. And now I think I know why it may have died. So let's look at those reasons. By the way, check this out. See how cold it is in this house, guys? It's insane. Okay, so I have some ideas and thoughts as to what might have actually happened here, and I have a comment from one of you guys which kind of actually may be the reason why I think our Drosera regia actually did end up dying. So first off, the seed we may have got was probably really old. I had it, in the fridge for myself for a year before I was able to plant it, and the reason for this was because the seed itself came from the United Kingdom to me here. Well, to me in South Africa back then, and then it took me like about a year for me to actually get from South Africa into Australia, where I obviously planted it with you guys. So first off, I think the seeds were actually quite old, and when they're old, they get decrepit, they don't really know what they're doing, they have Alzheimer's and dementia, they don't know what they're doing. So yeah, can't really blame the seeds, they got old. Now, secondly, another thing that I was actually reading up about that may have been a reason as to why these seeds didn't do so well is simply because, as I said, the seeds were old, but it was also maybe because, is that even a sentence? When I got the seeds, I got about 15 seeds, but a lot of it was not actually seeds. It was just like little black kind of half moon things. And now the thing about this is that this is actually most probably not seeds, or actually just chaff or whatever they call it. And this can oftentimes come from plants that have been self-pollinated. So if you have a Drosera regia and you're pollinating it with itself, obviously there's not good gene mixture. So when the actual DNA of the plants come together, there is no differences in the DNA, which obviously means that the resulting offspring is quite weak. And you obviously see this a lot of times in people. If they inbreed with each other, you get some abnormalities. In dogs, if you inbreed dogs, then obviously you get sick dogs and weak dogs. Same with cats, birds, all these different animals. So it's the same with plants sometimes too. Even though plants are a little bit more free with this, some plants you can't do it, and the regia is one of them. So I also think that the seeds we got were actually just quite weak. As I've said, I had like 15 seeds, but only 3 sprouted and 1 died after like 4 days or something. So that may have been another reason. Now, there's actually something that may have been the biggest factor in all of this, and that's actually something I want to talk about right now. You guys can probably see that it's dark outside, and that's because I'm recording this video very, very late. I don't like recording at night, but I had to today because I ended work late, and obviously that means everything else ended up being quite late too. So yeah, you guys had to deal with the bad lighting and the dark background, and you guys can see like my back moving and everything. But anyway, I wanted to talk about the other thing that may have been the reason as to why our plants actually did not survive. Now, as I've told you guys many, many times, you need to make sure that you fertilize your Drosera regias, because what these guys do is that if they start growing and you don't have any fertilizer for them, they don't have any nutrients, what they do is that they starve themselves to death. So what I did in turn was that I created a very dilute mixture, a fertilizer mixture, and I applied this mixture onto our seedlings twice a week, ever since they really started growing. Now, one of our subscribers actually mentioned it right over here, that I may have actually been overfeeding these guys, and I may have also been feeding them too much, and also too directly onto the actual plant itself, which can and does burn your plants. And I do not know why I didn't think of this thing. Obviously, come on, these plants do not like fertilizer. The Drosera regia is an exception which lacks a little bit of fertilizer. So I honestly don't know why I thought that it just needed more and more and more fertilizer. Obviously, I was burning the poor little thing and I was hurting it quite badly because I was obviously over fertilizing it. So I think this is actually what happened, because we had the two guys come up. The first one died off and then the second one died off. And what I also noticed is that when they started dying, when I applied the fertilizer onto them because I thought they were starving, I then noticed that the next day they regressed even more. So this is probably a really, really big sign as to why these seedlings unfortunately did not survive, because my own stupidity did not allow me to think, oh wait, maybe I'm over fertilizing them. So definitely thank you so much to the subscriber who actually brought that to my attention. But guys, although we do not have any more Drosera regia seedlings right now, I actually do have some other news for you guys. So obviously, as I've said, our little baby Drosera regias have unfortunately died because I'm just stupid and I did not realize that I was overfeeding them. I just thought they were starving. So yeah, super, super dumb of me. And I really started noticing that the leaves started to go dark, like grayish, and then obviously the bottom leaves went black, and then that little bud, which I thought was still alive and doing good, that eventually just went black as well. But what I really noticed is that the actual stem itself, like the stem which was so strong, literally turned to mush in 2 days. After those 4 days, whatever, that little stem was floppy. It was dead. It was just tissue left behind there. So what I think that happened is that it probably got burnt real bad with the fertilizer, and then this caused the cells to burst, I guess, and die off. And I think that's what happened with the roots itself. And so if you guys can hear tinging in the background, that's just Bear having his dinner, because if I didn't feed him now, he was going to beg, and he wouldn't stop begging. So I just decided to feed him now. But what I wanted to say to you guys is that although our little regia is dead, what I have gone and done is that I've ordered some more Drosera regia seeds so that we can actually try this again. And this time, we'll be doing some things a little bit differently. And just one more thing, guys, before I forget, I also think that the cold was another issue with these guys. Of course, they experience this kind of cool temperatures where they're native to in South Africa, but excessive amounts of the cold temperatures, especially when they're so young, may actually damage them. So this is probably another thing that really hurt them. But as I said, I have gone ahead and ordered some more seeds. Now, what I have actually done is that I have made sure that I got enough seeds so that we actually have quite a few little guys germinating, so that if one or two dies off, we still have a couple left over, because that's kind of what happened with our last set. We literally only had 3 that sprouted out of 15. So none of them survived, so obviously we have nothing left now. So what I did is that I placed an order for 30 Drosera regia seeds. Now, obviously, these seeds, they are not very easy to find, and I actually got pretty lucky with finding them, and I also got them for a very, very good price too. So I was thinking to myself, I'm going to get them right now, because these seeds are something that I really, really want to grow, and obviously grow with you guys. So what I'm going to do differently this time is that when the seeds eventually arrive, it will probably take a month or something, because shipping is very delayed at this time. So what I will do is that I will firstly prepare our soil, and what I will do with the soil is that I am going to take the top layer off, and what I'm going to really ensure is that I really chop that top layer up very, very, very fine, because I think another issue that may really affect the germination of these guys is that if they don't have very good contact with the soil, because what they do is that they fall within the crevices of the actual sphagnum moss, and this can really cause them to not grow. Because if you have 2 pieces of sphagnum like this, and the seed is, pretend my hand is the seed, is sitting in between the 2 pieces of sphagnum, it has no real contact with the soil, and obviously it's not really going to germinate properly, because if a little root starts to come out, where's it going to go? It's floating in the air. So that is another thing that I will do. I'm going to chop that sphagnum up really, really fine, and then put it back on top. The next thing that I will do is that I'm actually going to keep it a little bit drier. So if you guys know anything about Drosera regias, they are actually plants that like to be kept drier. And what I was doing is that I was keeping them permanently moist and wet because they were seedlings. But seeing as I'm going to keep them inside from this point onwards when I eventually get the seeds, they don't need to be kept permanently wet, because I will be able to see them and I'll check up on them and basically spray them every time I need to. And when this tray does get low, I can very quickly and easily fill it back up with the water that they need. So I will keep them a little bit drier. Obviously, they're going to be seedings, so you have to ensure that you do keep them still wet and moist. But yeah, as I said, we will keep them drier. And as I also said, we're going to keep them inside where it is warmer so that the really cold temperatures don't affect them too much. Now, the other thing that I'm going to do is I am not going to fertilize them too much like I did last time. What I will do is I will let them start to obviously germinate and start sprouting. And what I will do this time is that I'm just going to leave those Osmocote pellets that we bought the last time. I will just place them around the germinating plants and I'll just leave them alone, so I don't have to worry about manually fertilizing them with the liquid, which will obviously hit their roots and hit the plants and burn them or something. Osmocote pellets will be enough to leach into the soil, and especially with the much better contact that the top layer of soil will have with the Osmocote pellets and the seedlings, it'll be much better than just using that liquid, because the issue that I have with the liquid is that if I just put it around the plant, none of it would actually go to the root of the plant, because as I've said, the soil was kind of like in mounds. It wasn't chopped up very fine. So even if I did put the fertilizer in, the plant wouldn't get the fertilizer. So that's why I was really directing it on top of the plant, quite a lot on top of the plant. So that is something that we're obviously going to get rid of as well. So I really hope that these things that we do will really help this, guys, because I'm really upset that our little Drosera regia is obviously gone. I was expecting it to start growing now pretty well and getting nice and big, and sharing its growing with you guys, but obviously it had other plans. But we will be able to do it again, and we'll have tons and tons of seeds to play around with and experiment with and really see how they do in the new environment. Now I hope that me obviously killing these little guys is something that you guys can learn from. These plants, they do not like to be over fertilized, so definitely make sure that you are not over fertilizing your plants in case you currently are. And obviously make sure that you follow the rules, and also don't base all of your plant knowledge and all of your plant experiences and whatever on me, because just like you, I'm just a person and I obviously make mistakes too, and sometimes I may not be fully informed about something. So make sure that you guys do tons and tons of research. Even if what I'm saying is completely true and correct, make sure you're still doing extra research and reading up more and checking out the Savage Garden, the book, because that book really has a lot of information. So if you guys haven't checked it out, make sure that you click on it in the link below and get yourself a copy. But yeah, that book I definitely recommend. But if you don't use that book, if you don't listen to what else I'm saying, there are tons and tons of websites online which are very helpful with obviously looking after your plants. Now, there's something else I want to talk about with the Drosera regia. These little guys are also plants that are notoriously known for dying off when they're babies, when they're seedlings. If they don't die off when they're young like ours did because they don't get enough food, or in our case, too much damn food, what happens is that when they get about an inch or so in height, they start changing their roots. And what they start doing is that they change their roots from baby roots into their first adult taproot. Now this is obviously a big issue for the plants, because generally plants start off with their taproot. They don't have to worry about transitioning and using energy to build a brand new root. These guys obviously do. So they start off with their little baby roots, their tiny little kind of like threads that go into the ground, I guess. And when they reach this 1 inch size, when they start getting a little bit bigger, then they start forming a nice taproot, a proper adult root into the soil itself. And this transition from making small little roots to a nice proper big thick one uses a lot of energy. And when that happens, this is when the plant, in most cases for most people, this is when the plant actually does die off. And this is when people get really upset that regias are very difficult to grow from seed. Most of the time, these little guys will generally die off at this point when they reach the 1 inch size, when they start changing from baby roots into adult roots. And this is when you really want to start making sure that you are fertilizing them correctly, not like us, but enough, and obviously giving them enough food so that they have all the energy they need to form this taproot. And once the taproot is formed, then they can put all that energy back into growing nice big leaves, developing new pitches, new leaves and new roots too. So this is the point when you guys must really worry about their feeding much more than what I was worrying about right at the beginning. This is obviously the critical time, and this is, as I've said, when most of these plants, this is when most of the plants start dying off, which is a real big issue for many people because, you know, they put a lot of time and effort like we did into our plants, which eventually just dies off because of whatever reason. And this is also true for many other plants such as Sarracenias and Darlingtonias. When they're quite small, you need to make sure that they're getting enough food and nutrients and sunlight and water and whatever else so that they can continue growing, because these guys are not the easiest to grow from seeds. So talking about Sarracenias and Darlingtonias when they're quite young that need to be fertilized, our Sarracenias are almost ready to pop open their first pitchers. Actually, one of them has popped open their first pitcher, and this means that I will be injecting them with steroids pretty soon to help them grow really, really big and strong in this upcoming spring and summer months. So definitely make sure that you guys subscribe to the channel, because that is probably going to be one of our next videos to do, as well as updating you guys on our Drosera seeds, our dewy pounds, because these guys are starting to grow now pretty well, even though it is still quite cold outside. So make sure that you guys subscribe to the channel so you can keep up on all of those things, and obviously so you can see when we get our next sets of Drosera regia seeds, which will obviously grow together like I spoke about earlier. So let's hope that those guys arrive pretty soon, and obviously we can start looking after them. And if you found any information in this video, please remember to leave a like, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.